Okay, so we're going to have a webinar with Davey from Cultivate in Ireland, talking about how community climate coaches has been moving forward in Ireland. Just to briefly introduce Davey, he's been involved in sustainability work for decades, was involved right from the start of the transition movement in Ireland, was very involved with the early stages and the right way through with Clough Jordan Eco Village in Ireland. And my impression is most significant things with sustainability and climate and resilience and well-being in Ireland, and Davey's involved there somewhere. And with Climate Coaches, Davey led that project. Um, and was the lead partner and really was the inspiration for the six-phase model. Uh, Came through in a well-formed proposal. So I will hand over to you, Davey, for you to lead from here.
For some reason my screen sharing's paused now after all of that. How did that happen? So you can now you can see me, can you? You can see
Yeah.
my slides, I mean. Phew. Okay. Thanks for coming. Delighted to be able to share just how we took the Community Climate Coach program to Ireland and progressed it there. Um, yeah, Steve, no, I'm not getting, all right, it's not letting me share my, all right, technology. So, um, as Steve said, I led the Erasmus project with a number of partners across Europe, Transition Towns in Luxembourg and PA, Permaculture Association of Britain, and um, our colleagues in Catalonia that do regenerative development. And we had a really good consortium that we got to spend, I think, just over 2 years to develop the frameworks, the composite frameworks, our two-wave model, and a number of other outputs. And also we got to meet each other and explore and progress this idea of community climate coaching. So then in Ireland, we had our first round of community climate action program by the government. So the government were looking for 18-month or 3-year projects. I went for an 18-month one to say that we would pilot a climate coaching program in Tipperary in Ireland, the county where I'm based in Cloughjordan, where we have the Eco Village. And sort of our partners are interesting because in Ireland we have the Public Participation Network, which is in every county. It was part of the Aarhus Convention in Europe, which was looking at freedom of information, rights of citizens. And so every county has a coordinator and a resource worker that serves community sector in each county. And each county might have well over 1,000 community groups. So that was an ideal partner. And then the two development companies, these are leader companies. You won't have them in Britain now, but you probably had in the past, local development companies spending European money for rural regeneration. And now with a priority around climate action, biodiversity, circular economy. So these partners were interesting to allow the community-led initiatives that we nurtured over this program to actually get support as they move on. So that's the program. I'm going to go through it. We normally would have a check-in, so we won't go out to breakouts, but I'd still like to just do a bit of a check-in just to get a sense of you. And usually when I'm doing a presentation, I'm sort of introducing some of the processes we use. So I think check-ins are essential for any meeting, any size meeting. Sometimes they take too long, so you might do it in a breakout, which I do often on Zoom, even into pairs, and just given a couple of minutes each to share something. And then obviously you want to maybe harvest that, but when the time is constrained, harvesting into the chat is important. Sometimes when there's no time in a Zoom call, I would still do invite people to introduce themselves in the chat. So there's a bit of a check-in. But I think it's really important at any meeting that people get to speak at the start, and it allows, I think, more confidence of speaking later in the meeting. So I'd like us to all introduce ourselves. We'll do it in a couple of breaths. And I was just using the sort of active hope spiral, which I'm sure you're familiar with. I'll touch on it because it's one of the tools that we definitely use, which always starts with appreciation. And so I was inviting people just to say who they were and something they appreciate about community climate action as a bit of a check-in, just to give us that. So I'm going to invite, I know, Steve, would you like to just kick off and maybe pass as we do to the next person?
Yeah,
Couple of breaths.
yeah. So I'm Steve from the Permaculture Association, leading on community climate coaches in the UK, and have been involved in delivering pilot trainings in Leeds, Stirling, and Bristol, and we've learned a great deal from that. And I really appreciate the diversity and the sort of personal engagement we see from people that are involved in community climate action. I will pass to Lara.
Hi everyone, thanks for doing this talk. Um, yeah, I'm Lara. I'm sort of between Bristol and London, and something I really appreciate about the community climate coaching is the opportunity to do something really positive, to be in part of the catalyst movement for change. Means everything. Thank you. I'll pass to Kirsty.
Hi everybody. I'm Kirsty, working with the Scottish Communities Climate Action Network, and I've collaborated with Steve to bring the CCC into Scotland. What I appreciate about community climate action is really the sort of relationship building and some of the fun that can be had. It's not all difficult, but I also really appreciate the way that it kind of unlocks a feeling I have of like, there's too much to do, but if you're sort of alongside other people, then it can feel, if not achievable, it feels better to be in company. So that's what I like about it. Over to you, Laura.
Hi there, everybody. Lovely to see you again and see some new faces. So I'm Laura. I work for Transition Black Isle, and yes, we've been delivering community activities around 3 different types of waste. And through those activities, we've developed climate cafes, repair cafes. We do film nights. And what I'm really enjoying about this sort of community aspect of climate action is that people are finding ways that they can practically do something about climate action when it's such a huge, vast problem that people maybe feel like they can't take action or they can't do anything to change things. So being able to introduce little ways that people can take action personally themselves has been really empowering for folk and allows to sort of break down some of those anxieties around climate action as well. So
Yeah, and I'm Davy. As Steve said, I work in Ireland, although I'm Scottish. I've been here 30 years, so I feel more Irish than Scottish now. And what I appreciate about community climate action is, of course, the social aspects, the community aspects, those building connections, and the benefits that has for so many things, including our mental health. So that is one of the things there. So I'm just going to.
We have got James in the room as well.
Oh,
I've just
where?
and he's not showing on Visio, but there he is.
Sorry, James.
So did you get the questions, James?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Hi, I'm James. I'm in Bristol. Feels good to be doing this idea of climate coaching with other people. I feel better about facing climate together with others. And I'm appreciative that this training has come to me and it's being facilitated by Permaculture Association. Yeah, that's me. I think that's my check-in.
Brilliant, James. Thanks, everyone. It's strange I can't see you at all, James, not even a blank screen. Normally you would still see your name, but anyway, you're here, and that's the important thing. So I'm giving just an overview of what we did in Ireland and continuing the Community Climate Coach program that was developed in Europe through a Erasmus project. Just to start with a quote, I like this quote from Bill McKibben. The most important thing an individual can do about climate change is to be less of an individual. And I think that's why community climate action is so important. I actually don't like the term climate action. I think it's quite reductionist. It's myopic on carbon and emissions, absolutely vitally important, but there's still so much other priorities: biodiversity, ecosystem restoration, circular economy, rural regeneration, community building, community well-being, mental health. All of those can be addressed through the same actions that we're framing as climate action. However, that's where the money is, and the supports will be for a long time. And we do have to massively decrease our ecological footprint. I also like this quote from Margaret Wheatley, a systems thinker, an activist from the US. There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. And with these programs, what I find is it's informing the people's concern. People have a concern. I think when we hear climate action, we go, oh, what do we do? Do we just change our light bulbs, or is there more that we can change that would benefit our communities, our places, and our lives? So I like the idea of surfacing what we're passionate and what we care for. So you've all seen this framework, I think, because it was in the Stirling course and I think in the Bristol course. I won't spend too much time on it, but just to give you a little introduction to it again, it's really based on two loops, which was by the Buchanan Institute, which Margaret Wheatley used to lead, gone now, and then sort of building on Joanna Macy and Chris Johnson's work around Active Hope, or the work at Reconnects, with the great unraveling and the great turning in our two loops, which we've reframed as waves. I should have put a link in, but I've done a bit of work using the metaphor of surfing the waves of change when I was doing things for transition town groups. You can still find that in YouTube, Surfing the Waves of Change, which just uses that metaphor of a good surfer is someone that can navigate change well, and why we need to think about that from a community perspective. So the two waves, really that first wave is that wave we've been on of modernity. We're at a peak now, and it's almost peak everything when we look back to how we got here. Not just our peaking cheap oil, but peaking in resource use and water use and all sorts of resources that we depend on. We're peaking, and that's where we put the first phase, which is really about orientation and really understanding from a personal point of view where we're at in the world. So from this vantage point at the start of the first wave, we can look back and we could look at how did we get here, which I think is a good exercise. We can also look forward. If you did permaculture, David Holmgren in his book Beyond Sustainability had looking using the peak oil curve, but looking at where do we go, to infinity and beyond with a techno future or green tech stability, or what he was saying was permaculture or collapse. So you had four options. I think in the Joanna Macy and Chris Johnson's, it's moving away from business as usual, which is the progress that we expect, that keep growing, and that we need to start to think about and engage looking at fitting the carrying capacity of this planet. So that first phase, we packed with tools in the European project, things like the donut economics, or really understanding ecological limits, but even introducing some inner tools like the inner development goals. And Kate Raworth has thinking like a 21st century economist, and there's other approaches to try and get us thinking more systemically. So that first phase into the second phase, which is building the capacity to for community engagement and really working together well, which is where communities of practice might come in, which I'll show you in the Irish version we used as an approach. But it's also getting building capacity in some of the facilitation and community engagement processes and methodologies that we see in things like Art of Hosting, World Cafe, and these different approaches that are much more participative. So that's the second phase. Moving into connection, and you'll see when I show you the Irish project that our community engagement campaign is actually phase 3, 4, and 5, connecting with community, place, and nature, then mapping our strengths and envisioning community-led initiatives, and then nourishing through community and through dialogue and nurturing community-led initiatives. So that's our 3, 4, and 5, which I'll show you is how we delivered that in our Irish version. And then 6 is about amplifying, or if you mapped this 2 waves onto an active learning cycle, it would be that reflection as we move forward again to start the journey again. So it's really important. And the feedback then inspiring from each of those phases, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, back onto this crashing wave to help more people emerge from it. There's a lot more in that 2 wave and 6 phase, but it's enough for us to shape where we're going. Now, the call for Ireland was really about emission reduction, and I wasn't happy just doing a project that would do that. With Ecolease, who all the partners were members of Ecolease, the Meta Network for Sustainable Communities and Climate Action, we were looking much more broadly. So I framed this program in Ireland around community well-being, and our partners had used that framework, community well-being framework, before. So it was like building on something that they recognized. But for me, it's just really feeling that our participants, the population in our localities, are healthy, but also that we have a healthy environment and thriving local economy. So we could, I like the framing of the well-being economy. Say we have a well-being economy alliance here, which I think is so important to look at how it's the economy that's driving inequality, climate breakdown, ecosystem destruction. All of this is driven by an economy, so we need to move to a well-being economy. But also for the climate action, it's more climate resilience and climate justice than just climate mitigation. Although they're all important, we've focused on climate resilience, where really it's just, as we saw in the emergence of transition towns, how do we cope in our local places? How do we thrive, not just survive? And I think that framing of climate resilience reduce our fossil energy use, but building that ability to adapt and cope and deal with the many disruptions that we're going to be facing in the years to come. So that's our framing. The other big difference, I think, from a lot of like eco-village transition towns and some other climate work is we take a bioregional approach. I think this is really important because we can have more relationships and connections, and we can look at assets or things like community wealth building in a bigger area than just one village, one street, one town. So just to say that we took a bioregional approach. I'll come back to that. So how did we start? Well, we in this program, we had a diversity animator, because for this program, it was really important for the Irish government that we reach beyond the usual suspects. We brought in the seldom heard or the harder to reach communities. That was really important. So we did a lot of thinking in the training on how you might do that. And we tried to build a community of practice that was diverse, not just with new communities, but with people that are hard to reach, like farmers, say, in rural communities. So we put together a community of practice, which we had done work on before in another European project on how communities of practice can be used by our sector, the sort of community voluntary sector more, not just universities and government departments using this approach. And really, as a sort of peer learning network, isn't it? So we sold this, because we didn't pay people to come on the course, we sold it as a continuous professional development. So if they were a farm leader or a community leader or working in a community group and wanted to build their capacity in really it was facilitation and community engagement, that we could do this 6-month course. And so setting up WhatsApp groups and having mechanisms to share. We had funding to bring in experts. These experts won't mean anything to you, but in Ireland, they're all big authors or TV celebrities. So Peadar Kirby lives with me in the Eco Village. He's written 30 books on development, critique and development. Anya Murray's written a book, The Wild Embrace, about our connection with nature. And Duncan Stewart is one of the most famous people in Ireland because for 20 years he had a TV show that introduced ecological things. So whenever you bring these people in, it sort of can get more people coming. Oh, I want to do something with Duncan Stewart. So we did full days with each of those thinkers. We did online sessions. We did a community and facilitation training, a community engagement and facilitation training. And we did a number of online expert inputs and support sessions over that 6 months. And that's where we built the capacity, if you like, that phase 1 and phase 2, that personal capacity to orientate, to see the bigger challenge. This isn't about recycling. It's not even about changing light bulbs or cars. This is about transformation in our local places and hopefully building stronger regions that can cope with the challenges we face. So this is really, that community practice was phase 1 and 2. And in that, we developed the capacity and understanding and even some tools to do phases 3, 4, and 5. So let me come into that then. So what we did, Tipperary is a long county. It's divided into 4 municipal districts. These are political regions within our county, and the closest we could get to bioregions. I had trouble selling that word. People are all bioregion, I don't understand it, although it's getting more credibility now because there's a couple of bioregional weaving labs, which is happening all over Europe just now, connecting people in a bioregion, similar principles that we use. So we formed 4 hubs, and I know SCAN take a hub approach as well. I think it was really important. And the people in the community of practice joined one of those 4 hubs, and then they advertised, promoted, and delivered the 3 community engagement sessions that they'd been trained up to identify how to reach people, how to reach seldom heard communities, and how to host this that would be engaging and dynamic. And what we really learned from observing other climate champion programs here in Ireland, there's quite a number of them, is that most of them were trained up to deliver the most depressing PowerPoint presentation that led to no more engagement. And people didn't come back after that first session, or very few people did. So we realized that when we were asking what the challenges was, it wasn't climate change that was the challenge. It was people felt disconnected. They felt disconnected to each other, to their place. So we really started with nature and place connection, exactly as we have it in phase 3 in our 2-wave and phases. Then, and this was, I think, a surprising benefit, we always knew we were going to focus on identifying strengths. You know, that's an asset-based community development approach. Start with what's strong in your place, not what's wrong with your place, and really build, well, what have we got already? So we, for this, and I'll show you a bit more of this, we set up on an open green map platform, which I think Scotland's used as well. There's definitely, I don't know if SCAN has, but definitely groups in Scotland have used it. And we developed a set of icons specifically for community climate coaching in 6 areas, and I'll show you those in a little, so that all the way through this community engagement process, which is just 3 sessions, we were building a map, a community wellbeing and climate resilience map of local community-led initiatives. So that's what we're doing. Then our final phase, we got into the conversations. Where do we go? How do we accept where we're at and building from our strengths, and really using a story and conversation approach. So once we'd identified the different initiatives were in our area, we could invite them to a session and give us a little bit of a story, a bit of inspirational story of whether it was a repair cafe or a biodiversity centre or a community energy co-op. So they gave the stories in those last sessions, and then followed by a World Cafe conversation. So that was our sequence in the community engagement campaign. And so we shaped this. We did posters about and changing the language. It wasn't about climate action, to help shape a thriving and sustainable Tipperary, and invited people to come to. We did 12 of these workshops, and the 3 in each hub, but the same sequence and building onto the same map. So in the end, our map had 140 community-led local projects identified in 6 areas, which meant that people could step into support or buy services or products from these community-led, community-owned local initiatives. So that was how we framed it. I'll go through each one and give you just a sense of it. So that first one, nature and place connection, held either completely or partly outside. We don't have to do this in a lecture theatre in a community centre. We did end up doing it in community centres, but we picked ones with either gardens or access to park so that we could do exercises outside. You can see some of the pictures from some of these. And there's a little quote from Anya Murray. Her book's The Wild Embrace. She's also a radio presenter, so she's a very good communicator about how important biodiversity is to us. And so we explored that relationship between ourselves and nature. We were trying to get into a deeper sense of nature, not separate from, and also a bit more understanding and pride of our place. What are the strengths of our place? What do we like about this place? And started to introduce this idea of community well-being. So that was the nature and place connection. Some of the exercises we used, I was going to do a little breakout with those, but you probably used these conversation starters from Active Hope. That's the spiral there, starting with gratitude, second phase, honoring a pain, third phase, seeing with new eyes, and then going forth. So really starting with appreciation. That's why I started the check-in with an appreciation. We can build this. But what we did was dialogue walks, which we use quite a lot in the Eco-Village here, where instead of sitting in the workshop room or the classroom, we go out in pairs and walk through the landscape with these question starters, using these Active Hope question starters. We also, I'll show you our toolbox that we built for the coaches. We also built for the conversation session, the third session, we built a set of Active Hope conversation starter cards that we used. So we did that activity, the dialogue walk. Other activities were suggested by the coaches themselves because they were all coming with expertise in some areas. One was doing sort of nature walks or nature connection and forest bathing. So there's a few things that these sessions were flexible to bring in the coach's own perspectives. We weren't too prescriptive of how they do it. He said we were really said do something outside. Do something outside that connects us with nature and with our place or with each other in nature. So there's some of the walks of the dialogue walk in our Eco-Village, that first one, and the second one out they held it in a kiosk thing in a park, one of the groups, and did a bit of one of the Forest School facilitators did an exercise from Forest Schools with them. So 4 of these sessions were held as our first session for the coaches. The second one, this identifying community strengths, we put this mapping platform so that they could actually start mapping. We had mapping cards so we could workshop the mapping with people. Let's identify what's strong. What do you see around you? So people were filling in cards, they were filling in on the web platform and getting these up there. So really it was done in small tables. It was a bit like a World Cafe, but really trying to identify or show each other where we knew there was projects that could be mapped. What was really interesting when we did this in 4 locations, South Tip had a lot of circular economy, South Tipperary had a lot of circular economy projects, a tool library, a repair cafe, and the people in North Tipperary never even heard of it. Never heard of a circular economy project or a repair cafe or a toy library or a tool library. So there were some nice synergies even between the 4 hubs then of ideas and initiatives that might spark the interest of someone to go, well, if they can do it in South Tip, we can do it in North Tip. So it got into helping people imagine what could be in their place. So that was really helpful. And again, you're starting what's strong. You're not going, oh, we don't have any of this, or, you know, if only we could have funding to do this, if only we get an expert would come in and save us. So it was really helping them see, hey, you're strong already. There's a lot here we can build on. And we just have to connect that and help them make it more visible, help them to help their community see these initiatives. So those workshops both would have little stories as well from some initiatives. We did this quite often. Stories and conversations, I think, is a way that we can progress. And then building this map, which ended with 140 initiatives on a map in Tipperary, is great. So this was our mapping platform that we developed these icons in 6 areas: nature, food, and land use, so that there could be, and each icon could be a number of things. If there was a permaculture demonstration area like there was in Cloughjordan, or if there was a biodiversity farm where there was in Mid-Tip. So we identified these 6 areas with a number of icons that then the open mapping system is a really good open source, free to use mapping system. We started a campaign on that with these icons, and then just invited through the workshops, and also with QR codes and posters that went up around the county, just inviting people to put their own project up there. So that's it. We had nature, food, land use, zero waste circular economy, local economy, energy, travel and accessibility, social and cultural sites, health and well-being sites, and education and training sites. So it was quite easy for people to identify a community arts centre as part of this map. And it wasn't just all sustainable energy communities, which is what people would expect to map, or if there was any transition towns in Tipperary, which is not, apart from maybe Cloughjordan. So I think that it helped them see what they already had and inspired them to maybe think about what they don't have and what they could do in setting it up quite easily. So the workshops were great. We had we had the mapping system there. You can see, people could see it. They could learn how we made little tutorials of how to use the mapping system, and trained them up to do that. And that was a great success. And I don't think we've really maximized the potential of this, because now I'm trying to say to the local authority, you could publish this map. You could actually print it as a directory with a map of Tipperary with all these things in a little directory full of these pieces. So there's added value you could do after the process. You can't really see, that's Tipperary. It's a long county. There's 140 in there, but when you zoom out to that level, you only see so many icons. But there's the address, new.opengreenmap.org, and you go to campaigns and you'll see Community Wellbeing and Climate Resilience Map of Ireland. And I'm now trying to get other counties to replicate this, so we actually create a map of Ireland with this. And just recently, the Irish government have created their own climate action map, which is atrocious. It's really, really poor. And we did this on a tiny budget. We used our web budget, like $1,500 or something, to get all this set up with these icons. So I think there's a lot we can do from the bottom up, isn't there? So our last section in this community engagement campaign is this community conversations, which you know, a lot of the work I've been doing is hosting conversations and allowing people to come together and maybe have some input on where we're at and have some really good questions on how we move forward. So really using the World Cafe process, which I'm sure all of you have came across. I use it at different scales. All of those cafes in the pictures I facilitated. So I've been invited to do it for the government, which is the bottom right-hand corner. The one on the left is a big local development cafe, and the one there is one of our housing ourselves, an annual event we do in Cloughjordan, just using cafe. And I think what I've learned from using World Cafe is to have a table matrix rather than just doodle, draw, write on the tablecloth type thing, which for a facilitator, to get that harvest, it's all over the place. So we do a little table matrix for the conversation cafes, and it's part of our toolbox for the coaches, actual physical thing they can use. I'll show you that at the end. So yeah, you can see them with the table matrix. This is one of the workshops in Thurles, and you can see the table canvas in the middle that they're working through. So the question, maybe a couple of questions on there, and we, as a facility, can take them away and write them up and share the results of the event. But this event would have, because we identified more stories from our mapping system, a number of stories, and also probably a little contextualizing, building on our other 2 workshops, to really make sure that the conversation we're having leads to some sort of pathway for community wellbeing and climate resilience in that region. So that's where we were at with them. So I was going to do a breakout. I don't think we need to do this, but I just to and I'm sure you've used this Active Hope breakout, just using question starters. So when I look at the world right now, what breaks my heart is, and that just allows us to open up or lead into sharing how that makes you feel. Or looking at the future, this would be more of a seeing with new eyes. FA is looking at the future we're heading into, what opportunities I see are. So again, it just helps open up conversations. So we used this both in the nature connection and the dialogue walk, and then we used it to frame our community conversations. I use this now quite often in different processes, this approach. And one of the outcomes of the community climate coaches is an ongoing Active Hope. The community of practice are now diving into the Active Hope book and going through that. So I'll just keep going, and then I was going to stop there, but I'll do a few more slides on the outcomes, and then let's get into any reflections or questions that will help us or help me share more of what we did. So some of the outcomes, that top picture is their Minister for the Environment, Eamon Ryan, who was a big fan of our processes, and then just some of the pictures from the community engagement campaigns. So our final outcome was to do a national event. We did a big event with over 100 community workers, local authority workers, and local government people, community development people in a big hotel in South Tipperary. And really that was just sharing the insights and a bit of a pitch to try and get more work with it, to be honest, which hasn't come to fruition yet, a few months after we've finished the project. So as part of this, I shared, look, here's a training we're offering now, and we're hoping that other counties might pick up on this, which they haven't yet. So that was the first outcome. The 2 outcomes for the project that were stated were a training course. So we've done that in different ways and piloted it now with other development companies. And what I've been doing is a 6-module course with the second session a full day together. And I really find that sequence works. The first online session with the context, phase 1, I think is okay when you're just in your own little Zoom box. But after the second session, when we're a bit deeper in phase 2 and started to look at how you'd hold 3, 4, and 5, after that second full day, the rest of these online modules were so much warmer. People knew each other, more comfortable in speaking. And I've adapted this. This is the 2 I've delivered now in Cork for a development company. But what I'm trying to do is get a local authority or a regional public participation network or a local development company in another county to replicate more of the community of practice approach with the community engagement and map building, so that it'll be a bigger program. So there's a number of ways that I hope this will go forward. This 6-module course with 1 full day in Cloughjordan is one way, but the way I prefer to do it, we work with them over maybe 6 months. The other outcome then was our toolbox. So the Community Climate Action Programme was getting criticised quite heavily by other sectors for churning out toolkits. And the criticism came with, who's going to deliver these toolkits? But we developed a toolbox, actual physical box of reflection cards, template slides for the sessions, conversation starter cards, mapping cards, and then the tutorials and the actual mapping platform, table canvases for the conversations, which can be adapted on Canva. appreciation and reflection cards, as I said. And then this last piece, which I'll just mention because I could share this with you as a little tool. I quite liked it. Part of what I did at the start was create an advisory committee, and every 2 months they met me for me to share where I was at. And one of them says, David, this ecological handprint could be interesting for you because you're the logo for climate coaches that came out of Europe was this hand. And he was all, the ecological handprint supports the reduction of your ecological footprint. The ecological footprint is the damage we're doing and what we have to stop doing, but the ecological handprint represents what we need to do more of, engaging in community. So we created what for the last phase of our piece where we reflect. I wanted to create a reflection exercise, sort of based on this ecological handprint. And really, it's an assessment tool that you could use at the end of a workshop. We could use it at the end of here. You could even adapt it. So it just uses this hand. So it starts with what was appreciated, what was good, thumbs up. What strengths would you like to point out with a pointing finger? What was not so good? What did we love, this ring finger? What did we love about diversity we added? What would you promise to do, the pinky promise? What would you promise to do going forward? And then the palm, this is in sociocracy, the hand signal for objection is the hand, the upturned hand, because it's a gift. So this upturned hand in what can we offer our community going forward? I just love the simplicity of it. This little assessment tool, it's using our digits, it uses the hand, which is the logo, and it gives us some way to, once we answer those questions, you would actually create a little bit of a community well-being and climate resilience pathway, because from our sessions, those would lead to a simple pathway. So that was really our program in a sense. I'll stop sharing just so I can see you. Hello, James. Didn't see you before. So hopefully that wasn't too fast. Hopefully it was understandable.
Very understandable and very informative as ever. Has anyone got any questions, reflections, comments? I could start with just a quick clarification that the table matrix you mentioned, was that what you were saying was that you gave them a structured thing, kind of thing to work through on each table, did you? Is that what you were meaning?
Yeah, a table canvas. I think we've used them, Steve, in other projects. It just, in the World Cafe literature, they encourage you to play, doodle, and draw on a paper tablecloth, which I like doing. But what I find in harvesting, now you harvest in different ways, but the physical harvest was a bit of a mess. So this would have the questions stated, it'd probably only be 2 questions, and allow space for that to be filled in. So it helps lead you through the conversation, keep you on track, and we can share these at the end. So that's where we create that table canvas template.
Okay, thanks.
I really like the hand. I could just sort of see it kind of coming as you just began to describe it, and then you bringing up, sorry, the other way around, bringing in all this detail was brilliant, and it's really easy to grab onto and explain, and it's funny, and finishing with the whole hand and offering. It's really nice. It's great to see that Active Hope's become such a big part of the whole approach, really, that it's so embedded in that, because it's a big part of my work. And so and I've also done Active Hope walks, and not in the context of a bigger project like this, but really find that it works well doing it outdoors and getting people on the move and having stops along the way, and being out in nature and appreciating what's around you, and nature being able to hold some of those more difficult conversations, and also walking and talking. You're often not having to make eye contact, and so you can just walking alongside somebody, shoulder to shoulder with somebody, and it can be a bit less intense than sort of saying all the intense stuff that you might be feeling while somebody's looking at you. So that's great to see that.
Those are also like energizers, those little dialogue walks. Let's do a 20-minute dialogue walk. We'll go outside, we'll walk this way with one question and walk back with another question. It also is building energy as well and refreshing. We're outside, or we even sometimes we do the dialogue walks if we were doing like say the Eco Village, we're doing a tour, or if we're doing a sort of place appreciation exercise, we might have a bit of dialogue and stop and explore a little. What are we looking at? What are we seeing? How was that chat? Change partner and do it again. So you can actually make something more of it. And again, just to reinforce the importance of the work at Reconnects, there's a load of tools in there that are absolutely perfect for community climate action. And I'm finding even more tools. Like I was telling you, Kirsty, I'm in Scotland next week for the launch of the Scottish creative placemaking. There's lots of creative placemaking tools which are about participation, engagement, understanding our place, looking at how we make our place better. So a lot of this, these sort of initiatives, and of course we've had 20 years of transition town work with stuff coming out there. So there's a lot of things to draw from, isn't there, that we can bring in. And hopefully the way that we designed this, some hubs might change the exercises or the process, but I think there was something important in the sequence, that we don't start with the really heavy, and this is the facts about climate change. We bring that in slowly, and these sort of things. So yeah,
And
active hope, I'm a big fan.
we used the walk for a taster of coaching practice, giving people in Bristol. We used that. We did it a mix of outdoors and indoors, I think, in Stirling, but it worked well. I think there was a nice little garden at the venue as well, and just going through the questions in effect as a dialogue of what's going well in your climate action work, what's difficult or challenging, what's your next step, those kind of typical, simple, straightforward coaching questions. And certainly it is starting to come through. I think it was clearest in Bristol because we're getting used to how to deliver the sessions, that we found the feedback was just that basic coaching approach is really useful for people working in this sector. So I was wondering, have you been using it? How have you been engaging with that coaching model?
Yeah, myself and Steve actually went on some coaching courses then, and one of them was coaching in nature. We used this shoulder to shoulder, as you say, Kirsty, dialogue walk, or even in headphones, so that the coach, we're both walking outside. We're not sitting in two rooms, and the coach, you've got your headphones on and you're talking with those sort of questions that Steve's talking about. So again, I love the ability to adapt and play with these things and change them about with the similar principles. We get outside, if we're walking together, shoulder to shoulder, conversation starters to keep it moving, or if you were doing coaching, just go outside. Because we've got a fantastic estate in Cloughjordan and Eco Village, we've got such amazing places to go for walks that you could stop in somewhere really special, or somewhere that would be interesting from a sustainability point of view. So you can be stacking the walking, the dialogue, and seeing some community strengths or sustainability initiatives all at once. I love that. That's a permaculture approach, isn't it? We'll stack as much as we can.
Any other questions or comments from anyone?
Hi, I was just I love the fact that it's coming from a community wellbeing approach. I think I feel trapped within climate action when we're coming out and talking to people, and it has really not helped us to reach those wider and diverse audiences. So I just think that's a fantastic way to take things forward. I'm beginning to start to sort of put the dots together, and I think there's a few things that I can really take from some of those toolkits that you mentioned as well to sort of facilitate some of those groups. I think it's like I need to come backwards to start to go forwards again.
Mhm.
We've missed a few of those steps over the project. But yes, it's been really, really interesting listening to you today, Debbie and Steve and Kirsty as well. Yeah, I always feel enthused after meeting up with you.
So let me say a little bit more about that because I totally agree. I think climate action just freezes people. I mean, we've been since the 90s be told to unplug our appliances, to change our light bulbs, more recent times to drive electric cars. It doesn't seem transformative enough. It's just business as usual, greened up, isn't it? So unless we're facing more holistically the priorities and challenges we face and bring them all together, I mean, we really could address climate through community-led local development or circular economy work or rural regeneration or ecosystem restoration. We can do all, we're addressing climate. But when you're expected to have conversations about climate, I was at a big government thing last week and they brought different people together. George Marshall was there and um, also Kate Rayworth presented, but they were all, oh, how do you have conversations about climate? I never have conversations about climate. What would we be doing? Sitting talking about 2 degrees and 350 parts per million. No one has conversations about climate change. That is the thing that's motivating our conversations about community resilience or circular economies or renewable energy or community energy. You know, these are the conversations that we want to have, not climate conversations. So I just think it's so reductionist now, especially we had in Ireland 15 years of real sustainability, even the Sustainable Development Goals, not a big fan, but when we see them in that nested um, that wedding cake piece from the SDGs, where you see the importance of the ecological system nested within that society, nested with that economy. These things can help us start think more systemically than just seeing everything as separate priorities with separate policies and separate funding streams. Um, I think we just need to be showing people that this is about thriving in the face of challenging. It's about making our places stronger. These conversations and coming out, engaging in a community-led initiative is so good for our physical health and mental health. So the community well-being frame even takes sustainability out of just being seen as someone for environmentalists or social activists. Everyone can be in that community well-being. And climate resilience then helps us see that it's about adapting and coping in our place. So yeah, I'm quite a critic now in Ireland of this focus, which they have to do, of climate action. It just doesn't lead to action.
It's actually quite interesting that we're currently going through our place planning work on the Black Isle. When through our place plan, there was identified 3 different priorities which fell right into the sort of climate action realm. Unfortunately, though, those discussions have now come to a stop because of governance and who's going to take the plan forward and where does it sit. So it's very frustrating, especially when you're in a 3-year project and you can see so much potential. Yeah, it's just wonderful stuff. I'm really interested in it, and I'm really hoping that we can bring some of the tools and the conversations that we're talking about today into the last few months of our work.
And I do think it leads into a lot of work that Scotland's been very strong on, community ownership and community wealth building. I mean, now Scotland, especially maybe down in Dumfries, I don't know if it's up in the Black Isle, but definitely taking this community wealth building as a sort of new developmental model, which is about connecting these big users or spenders and setting up new co-ops that can take these procurements. And I just think that it just relates so well to community wealth building and community well-being beyond just climate action.
Yeah, it's bringing down the power to the communities and and giving people a voice, which is just fantastic. It's just yes, I'm just conscious that I need to reach more people, so I'm putting the pressure on my back now. Need to get out there and reach some more people to get involved. Mhm.
Maybe just a little bit on that, because Laura, we had a big objective to reach the people that most people weren't reaching, and I'm not sure we did. Now, it wasn't just the social inclusion definitions, more people of color and people different genders or different sexualities, the usual diversity. We identified it was farmers that were harder to speak
Mhm.
to. It was younger people. Older people would come out for their tidy towns. They would come out for their community events. It was the younger people that was hard to reach. But I think the big learning for us was, if we really want to reach a certain demographic, then take it to them.
Mhm.
I think that might be an easier way, rather than expecting them to come, because it's very challenging. I don't know anything. These are all people who went to university. They all know stuff. I don't know stuff. I'm just a simple, normal person. So it's very challenging for them to walk into, say, a community of practice or even an event that's been held by the coaches.
You're
So
right,
I think
Davey.
sometimes go to them with a little program.
I used to do an awful lot of door knocking in sort of smaller community projects, and that was our bread and butter down in Edinburgh, was community renewal, and that was exactly it. Take it to people, and then we had a sort of framework of working where it would take you down a community-led route, or would it take you down an individualistic route, and then you could then start to bring those resources to the person or to the community area that they're based in. I started a bit of that in the Black Isle. It's manpower that we don't have. That was the problem. And also it's very seasonal. So I would be chapping a whole row of doors, and it was holiday homes and people that were sort of transient and not in the area. So that kind of brought itself down. But it's been really important today to make me realise that actually that sort of really local grassroots stuff really is important, and we really need to do a little bit more than that, more than we have been doing.
And the feedback we got, particularly from the Stirling session with the younger people involved there, was exactly as you're saying, Davey. Don't talk about climate. What they were most interested in was something like how to be radical change makers, with that focus on just the activities, not the information. Let's do practical activities where we learn stuff which we can go out and use, that's about making change happen, and make it, just focus on that kind of thing. They're definitely interested in all these themes. That was the really clear message, but it needs to be done differently, and bring it to their kind of places. And I think the other interesting thing that came out from Bristol was, which made me think differently, was rather than doing it as a sort of workshops and trainings and so on, it would be really interesting to have a go at doing it as a social process that's much more about that connection, that the activities, get music involved and use music and arts and so on, and more of a kind of evenings and weekends rather than. We need both, I think, was what was really interesting, and particularly to reach a broader range of audiences. Then there's not going to be one size fits all.
So two things on that. I think food is a brilliant one to come around, eating together. Do you want to come for a meal, or do you want to come to a really boring meeting? Oh, I'll come to the meal. And then you can do some activities around it. And then one thing I was going to mention there, Laura, for you, was one of the tools that our Catalonian partners, Resilient Earth, brought into us was it's a tool called Critical Yeast. We don't actually need to identify and reach the critical mass. We don't actually need that. The critical yeast is identifying the small group that will actually make the change, like yeast does in the bread. So, the shopkeeper might be getting them involved, might open it up for a whole group of people. So it's finding the sort of people that might be unexpected leaders in the community. They're not the usual community leaders.
That resonates very well, because we used to try and highlight people. We would call them community connectors, and it was the women at the playground dropping off the kids and those kind of things. And so it's like you've got a little radar trying to pick these folk up. So no, it's great.
And then the other thing that's really important, why I think training coaches up that then can go and talk to people that look like them from their sector and speak with their accents, rather than us going into, say, a working class community and trying to engage and activate them. I think it's really important. And we found that with the farmers we trained up, those farmers talking to other farmers, they'll listen to them. They wouldn't listen to me talking about sustainability to farmers, but the farmers were very conventional farmers. We had 5 farmers in our program, and a couple of them have just become real leaders now in this farming community, making quite a big impact, actually, which is really nice to see. So there's a big thing about identity. I can identify as a farmer with this other farmer because he looks like me, he's in the same trade as me, and he speaks my language. And so I think that's important.
Definitely.
I was going to ask you, Davey, a bit more about what they're doing now. So you've got these 5 farmers leading the way and hopefully inspiring other farmers. And so is that happening with other people coaches who came on the training? Have you noticed, have you had feedback from any of them continuing beyond the end of what, your...
Well, we've still tried, it's only been a few months now, and so we've still tried to hold the hubs. I'm trying to get the local authorities. They've just given us a little bit of funding to do a training with each of the hubs again over the next month. And we have this Active Hope course that they're encouraged, invited to go. So we've kept a bit of activity for them. But when I'm saying that, what I'm identifying, the people that came for our training, so this fella, Daniel Long, he's a dairy farmer. He spoke at this big government event last week on the work that he's doing now, not on our coaches, but he's been working with farmers to look at what's called a land observatory, to sort of look at the speculative buyouts of farms and also access to land for young farmers. So he's been he's been on the television now, on the radio, newspaper articles about his doing that. And I'm not saying that it was just his going through the coaching program, but it's helped him. I think there's been skills there that's really helped him. And the Community Climate Coach, I just heard yesterday, have been nominated for a big award in some farm awards. They're actually nominated the Community Climate Coaches for an award.
I suppose that's one of the interesting things, just seeing the unexpected things that come out of, we're doing it for some kind of reason to go through our process, but one of the interesting things is just the catalytic effect of the unexpected things that come out of it.
Well, the thing that's still going that was unexpected was setting up a WhatsApp group for this community of practice, because what they did was start to share their own events and getting other people to come, sharing funding opportunities, and then support each other in their local areas to go for that funding and getting that funding. So these were unexpected little things that were so simple in place. My hope is we can resource these hubs at least, which I think is part of the Scottish model. And so that's what I'm hoping, and that there might be additional training and keep going. But we only piloted it in one little area, so it'd be quite good to try and get that into more areas, more regions in Ireland.
Great. Are there any more questions or comments from Lara or Laura?
I'm very much at the beginning of this journey, and so it's a lot to take in and grasp, and I really love hearing what you're saying and what you've done. But it's kind of a lot to sort of grapple with, and quite often it's interesting that you're talking about not talking about climate, because I always find the language around climate change, it's like it feels awkward, and I don't know how to talk about it, and I wonder what kind of tools, or I know you've got like this box of tools, but is that accessible for people like myself, for example?
Yeah, to be honest, there's nothing really in that box of tools that's that radical. I mean, that little handprint reflection exercise is quite interesting and new. The rest were just making it graphically nice to have table canvases of this conversation starters. But we have a big toolkit that we did with the European project that might be more useful. So it breaks down those 6 areas and packed full of signposts to methodologies, approaches, videos. So that would be good, Steve. You could share that the original CCC toolkit.
Yeah,
I think that's got
Probably has.
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I just haven't had a look at it yet.
I think one of the
Well,
things
they'll overwhelm you again. So
exactly
be
that's
careful, Lara.
I think that's one of the reasons that we see the 6-month process as being so valuable and really what's needed, because trying to share all the resources we developed through a 2.5 year project in 2 days is just too much, even with some online sessions to support. So definitely what you're doing there in Ireland is inspiring our thinking. I think for Scotland, I need to and want to be doing it where I live in Sussex.
Yeah.
And we talked in Bristol about potentially partnering up or at least doing it something similar in parallel, because we can do CPD accreditation now as the Permaculture Association. So that's actually very straightforward. We've got work going on around schools, which or every school in probably England and Wales, I guess, needs to have a climate action plan in place, whatever that means. So we've got something that can reach directly into schools. But I think definitely the 6-month process and is the way we're going to be going. And then I wondered if, because there are so many tools in the original CCC toolkit, are you finding now that you're focusing on, key ones for each phase and then let everyone be aware of the others, but here's some core tools? Because I think already after 3 pilots, that's what's coming through, that it's overwhelming to try and go through, whatever we have, 60 odd tools, let's say, in the toolkit. And actually it's 12 that are the most valuable ones, let's say.
Maybe even less. I think the donut economics and the planetary boundaries, key for orientation, absolutely essential. I've been at a few things with Kate Rayworth in the last month, and she does a lovely step into the donut exercise. So it's actually embodied. You physically step into the donuts or see the overshoots or what we have to, the shortfalls we have to build. So that's a brilliant one for phase 1. Phase 2 is about building relationships, connection. What was interesting, because one of our coaches that was working with me, a young man who does nonviolent communication. And so we brought that into phase 2 of the training. If you want to be in community and working with others, we're going to have some processes to avoid conflict. That went down so well. I was so surprised at how people resonated, never heard of it before, how they resonated with just a little simple introduction to nonviolent communication. And also in that phase 2, that led, which is critical yeast and some of the exercise around it. And people just, that makes it, that's smart. You're not trying to reach everyone. You just try to get the right people into the room, which are going to have more impact. And then for the actual exercises, so Active Hope, World Cafe, any conversation processes, so a lot of the art hosting tools that people will do in different places for those 3 phases. The identifying strengths from asset-based community development and having a mapping system, so simple, but there you are, there's a tool there. And what's really good is not just a talking shop, because a lot of people complain, I'm going to these 3 sessions, it's just a talking shop, nothing came out of it. But when you show, no, look at this map, 140 initiatives, and now you can go and visit, use their services, that's something really tangible. So yeah, you're right. They don't have to go too deeply in. And as we're all working in this sector, we're going to pick up different methodologies and tools from different approaches: permaculture, transition towns, eco-village, regenerative development. All of these are going to have similar principles, processes, and methodologies to use.
Yeah, and we've got years of this work ahead, and so just creating those connections between people. Interesting that you talked about how that WhatsApp group has been so good as a sharing model, and I know in Africa, in regenerative farming networks in Malawi, that's been a really simple and effective tool. In lots of places, those simple connections between people with similar interests and similar needs, and let them get on with it.
And as I said, when we did the needs assessment at the start, the biggest challenge that most people felt was a lack of connection to each other, to others, to their place, to their region. So I think that's what we're really addressing, and then that spins out to biodiversity protection or climate action or
Yeah.
think about circular economies or well-being economies.
Yeah. And in Leeds, Stirling and Bristol, everyone has fed back that it's just really great to spend 2 days with other people and just share, hear, be listened to, learn, and so on, and make those connections.
And I think that where we find ourselves in the world right now, I think that is so important, you know, to find kindred spirits and have that peer support and mutual support as we move forward into trying to face the way the world is right now. So yeah, going to get more important, and it is. We're in for the long haul, Steve.
Yes. Great. Well, if there are no further questions, a very big thank you, Davey. That's been massively informative and helpful, and it's definitely going to influence our ongoing conversations and how we take things forward. And for those that haven't participated live, we hope this has been a really useful resource tip for you as well. So yeah, thanks very much, Kirsty, for setting up the Zoom and everything, and look forward to next time. We'll probably be coming back to you, Davey, in 6 months or 9 months or whenever to give us some more updates. So thanks very much, everyone, and
thank you, and all the best with your journeys.
Great.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye now.
Thanks, Davey. Thanks everyone for coming.